Hello and welcome to the Minds on the Frontline podcast, a podcast dedicated to meaningful conversations that inform, educate, and inspire frontline workers, their families, and the public. Our goal is to shed light on the mental and behavioral health challenges faced by those on the front lines while providing valuable insights and real-world solutions. Minds on the Frontline is brought to you by the Frontline Strong Together 5 program. FST5 provides streamlined access to behavioral and mental health services and crisis resources for Michigan's Frontline 5 workers and their families. This includes all professional, part-time, and volunteer firefighters, EMS, law enforcement, corrections officers, and 911 dispatchers in Michigan and their immediate family members. First responders and mental health experts collaboratively created FST5 to provide 24/7 live support, effective resources, and cutting-edge services to prevent and alleviate PTSD, anxiety, depression, and other frontline work-related mental and behavioral health challenges. Need help now? If you are a frontline worker in Michigan or an immediate family member experiencing any crisis, work-related, substance abuse, depression, relationships, finances, or any other, reach out by calling 1-833-34-STRONG or go to fst5.org for more information. I'm Jeff Lassers, one of your hosts, and I'm a professional firefighter, paramedic, educator, and content creator. Minds on the Frontline is co-hosted by Mike Mattern, also a professional firefighter and paramedic. In addition, Mike is a peer support team member for his fire department and the FST5 program. In this episode, we welcome Matt Dunaj, a City of Detroit firefighter who knows firsthand how the weight of life and the job can push someone to the brink. In August 2024, overwhelmed by stress, exhaustion, and addiction, he found himself alone in his basement, gun in hand, convinced that ending his life was the only escape. His body was breaking down from the effects of a little-known condition called cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, brought on by years of marijuana use. The physical agony, combined with the relentless pressures of the job, had driven him to a place he never thought he would be. But in that critical moment, a simple act of love changed everything. His Goldendoodle, Mia, interrupted him, licking his face and snapping him out of his spiral. That instant of connection made him stop and rethink everything. He saw the devastating reality of what he was about to do, the pain his loved ones would endure, the aftermath of his decision. Instead of pulling the trigger, he made a different choice. Matt turned to the IAFF Center of Excellence, seeking help for both his mental health and substance use struggles. But recovery was not a straight path. It took 3 separate trips to rehab before he truly found his footing. Each time, he gained new insights, but the battle wasn't over when he walked out the doors. The real work came in the months that followed, navigating the ups and downs, pushing through the setbacks, and finally committing to lasting change. During this episode, Matt opens up about the stigma of seeking help, the illusion of the honeymoon phase after rehab, and the ongoing work of staying on track. He shares how his perspective has shifted from feeling isolated and ashamed to becoming an advocate for better mental health resources in the fire service and all frontline communities. His story is a powerful reminder that recovery is not a single event, but a process. It takes time, persistence, and support. If you or someone you know is struggling, this conversation offers hope, insight, and a path forward. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn, and make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning. How are you?
Very good. Matt, welcome to the Minds of the Frontline podcast. You brought a four-legged friend with you today. She's our secondary guest. She doesn't have a lot to say today other than how cute she is. How you doing?
Fantastic. How about yourself?
Very well. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Matthew Dunaj. I'm a Detroit firefighter, 36 years old. Been with Detroit for 8 years now. On the side, I paint and work at a golf course, Cherry Creek Golf Course. Avid golfer, of course, naturally. Beautiful dog, Mia, 3 years old. Beautiful girlfriend. We've been dating for about 3 years as well. And I live in Chesterfield, Michigan.
East Side guy.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
definitely.
Did you grow up on the East Side?
Yeah, so naturally, we grew up off of Ross in 94.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, really East
All
Side
right.
guy.
Yeah, my father was a cop in Detroit, so that's where
Neat.
yep.
There's certainly those times in our lives when, if you've ever been in any type of substance use disorder situation, where you're clean and you're focused and you're on it and you can make some amazing things happen.
Yep.
And it's really the problem of doing it over the long period without those dips being too long and being invasive on the long-term lifetime use of the stuff, right?
Yep.
And so we don't expect story to, be like this. It's one of these stories that you're going to see dips in every life, but you want to see the trending upward, and sometimes things can lead us astray of that trend going upward.
Yep.
And yours got so bad at one time that you found yourself in suicidal ideation and a near attempt. Is that
Yep,
correct?
That's correct.
So take us back to that. What was going through your mind, and how did our friend Mia pull you out of that in that basement?
So my go-to is marijuana. Unfortunately, my body does not accept it like other people's do. Cannabinoid hypermesis syndrome is what it's called. Took me 10 years to even realize it was a big thing. So anyways, I was on a downward spiral with that. Had been throwing up for a couple days, sick, literally at my lowest weight I've ever been.
And were you continuing to use through that, not knowing what you had, or did you know?
No, I knew at this time.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I knew probably for the past 2 years now. Like I said, I didn't think it was a real thing. Obviously it is. So I was in one of my episodes, and stress was all-time high, working hours all-time high. So I was just on the edge. Actually, me and the girlfriend just came back from a wedding. She had stayed. I left because I knew I was going to get sick. So I came home. I had about a couple drinks there, and the pain from this syndrome, whatever I was going through, was just at its peak. I was throwing up. I was on the ground crying, like, just stop the pain, stop the pain. I just did not want to deal with anything anymore. Life, the pain, everything, struggles. I wanted to take the easy way out. That's what I wanted to do, and I had made my mind up. So I went downstairs, grabbed my father's gun, and cocked it, and thanked the Lord that she's intuitive enough, whatever, someone looking out for me, whatever it may be. She came up to me and licked me in my face. And like I said, up until that point, I had made the decision. The decision was made. It was going to happen. There was no, well, what if? It was plan out. That was the plan. And she just snapped me out of it. Just came to, and then I just was like, okay, that unconditional love brought me back. And then how's this going to play out? The girlfriend's going to come home. She's going to find me, pool of blood. The dog's licking my blood. Like, how's this going to go out with the family? How are they going to take that as well? And then I just mine started rolling. I'm like, that's not fair. That's not fair to them. It's not fair to me. And that's, yeah. So then the girlfriend came home, and I was just a mess. And she said, what are you going to do? And I said, take the gun to my brother's house first thing in the morning, get it out of here, get it gone. And then I'm going to call the Center of Excellence. I had been there before, and I said, I'm going to do it for me this time.
Now, prior to that night, had you ever had thoughts like this is what's, had it ever crossed your mind? Like,
Never.
okay.
Never in my entire life.
Not even an ideation, meaning a fleeting thought.
Nope.
And then all of a sudden, in the moment of all the built-up pain, and you're experiencing the nausea, the vomiting, and I think you're, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but projecting all of your problems onto this physical pain.
Yep.
But how we got there is really the root cause.
100%.
Okay, and so you were just so far away from help that you were like, all right, I'm just done. It's the shoreline so far gone. I feel like I have to go. Good old Mia comes by. The light beacon comes on. You can see the shore. All right, we're okay. We can get back.
Yep.
All right, and you mentioned, like you just said, it's a buildup over time, 3 trips to rehab. So walk us to maybe how we got to all of that. We're kind of telling this like a Tarantino film in a way. We start off with, whoa, my goodness. And we're doing that on purpose here, I think, for our audience to understand what this led to. Okay. So how did we get there is my question.
Marijuana is my go-to. That's how I escape. Some people drink, some people do other things. That's how I escape and get out of my head.
And when did you start smoking marijuana?
High school.
And then when did you develop the hyperemesis?
That would probably be my sophomore year at college. So I was about 19, 20 years old.
Tell us what that was experience like. Was it a building getting worse and worse and worse? Like kids with, oh, hey, buddy.
Oh, that's awesome.
You're a good girl.
Good girl.
That
You're
is
good.
awesome.
You're good. So since your sophomore year, you're using marijuana. Sometime in early college, sophomore year, you're getting the cannabinoid hyperemesis, which is relatively rare, but is a real thing. And so every time you use it or come in contact with it, it tends to make you pretty violently ill.
Yeah.
And I've seen this. But it takes a lot of that plus your genetic predisposition to kind of get to that. So were you using it as a crutch? Was this your way to escape, or was it just your party drug?
When I first started, it was a way to fit in and kind of be part of the in group and, everybody drinking and doing drugs. That's what it was.
Yeah.
That's how it started.
Sure.
And then eventually over time it evolved to, okay, you need to get out of your head, all the stress you're dealing with, wanting to become a cop, thinking in the back of my head that's what I wanted to do, but that's what other people wanted me to do. So that constant of who you really are, and then while smoking just to be somebody else, to please everybody else, it was kind of just that, I don't know, that perfect storm that where eventually it just turned to that is what I would do to escape, and it was a crutch after a while.
Did you notice also when you started finally getting into the field where the fire service, you were using it after runs and things like that to kind of disassociate yourself with those thoughts and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely, especially during COVID. That was huge because, you guys know left and right people gone. So it was tough. And then working that many hours, everybody else is at home, and we're out there doing the real work, and it definitely took its toll for sure.
I think it took a toll on a lot of first responders. If you worked during that time, everybody else is staying home. You don't have that option, number one. But like you talked about, the amount of death that a lot of us saw because of COVID, you'd see people.
Just the talking of the death all the time.
Well, yeah.
Just constantly talking about numbers and then walking into it constantly. And it was like a daily occurrence.
Yeah, and you were like faced with it every day. People just heard about it on the news, whereas the rest of us were going into the houses, we're going into the nursing homes and seeing the people who are dying from it. And it was more real for the first responders than it was these people sitting at home just hearing about the numbers. Like X amount of people died today.
Yeah. Now, let's get to your coping mechanisms of using marijuana. Alcohol really wasn't your drug of choice, but you'd have a cocktail. You didn't feel enslaved to it.
Nope, never a problem.
And what's interesting about marijuana, especially these days, is you can get away with it on a plane. It's easy to hide. You can't smoke cigarettes anywhere. You smell it forever. But the concentrates, all the different ways you can ingest marijuana now, you can eat it, all the stuff. It certainly lends itself to be a very easy to go to crutch. But you experienced that crutch start to fall apart. Your body couldn't handle it anymore. Did you realize it was a coping mechanism? Did you feel like you had to quit this thing? Did you know it was a problem? Were you admitting it to yourself that it was a problem?
So for 10 years, I acted like it didn't even exist. I was getting sick for other reasons.
Wow. You had 10 years of dealing with sickness, probably smoking to, quote, cure the nausea.
Yeah. And obviously over time, it got worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
So when it first started, it's not as bad.
It's an autoimmune response. So the more you do it, it ain't going to get gooder.
So then finally, like you said, I start doing my own research. Like, all right, why am I getting sick? So I went on Facebook, and sure as heck, I went on there, and there's a group of 30, it's up to 30,000 people now of just lifetime smokers that suffer from this. And as of recently too, people that have passed away, dehydration, heart attacks, cardiac arrest. And we're talking like 27-year-olds, 30, like people that are too soon for sure.
Wow. That's crazy. And it had that strong of a hold on you that you couldn't recognize that it was the source of the problem, this ironic situation you're in.
Yeah, it was up until 6 months ago. I still used it as a crutch.
Wow. So you're ignoring the fact that the problem, what it might really be. At that point, is this where we find ourselves at our first trip to the center, or did you have already been there?
First time was I'd called off work quite a bit of times, and it was because of work. That was the main reason. I didn't want to lose my job. The crew was looking out for me. They did me a favor. I mean, they could have shit canned me. They had the opportunity to, but they were looking out for me and my best interest. And that's the first time that I went to Maryland.
What year was that first trip to the Center of Excellence?
I believe it was 2019.
And why did you really go? What did you tell them? Were you there for marijuana use, or were you still like telling yourself that wasn't the issue?
Yeah, I kind of played it off, to be honest. It was like, yeah, I did a bunch of cocaine, which cocaine was never, I had dabbled but never bought it.
Did you feel like marijuana was too weak of a drug to seek help?
100%.
Yeah,
Okay.
I feel like that
100%.
drug certainly gets its rap that it's like, remember the movie Half-Baked?
Yeah.
You in here for some weed?
marijuana?
Marijuana? Yeah, everybody quotes it. And it's funny because,
is.
You compare it to meth and all these other things, and you kind of don't give it the credit that it's due, but it's proving that it can be something that grabs a hold and could ruin your job.
Yeah.
Which is going to spiral to the next thing.
Yeah, and you're right. It was embarrassing. It's like you want a cooler story, but it's like, hey, this is
Right. It's almost
over the
like not
years,
manly
it's like,
enough.
This is now. I'm just being honest. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's not like hardcore, but it's the truth.
But
So,
it is.
Yep.
And that's what we're saying is that
Yep.
even something doesn't seem like it's ruining your life, it can ruin your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at what point was it in that trip to rehab your first time that you realized that maybe marijuana was a problem for you?
100%. It was actually a guy from California that was like, "Oh man, that ain't real. Like you could just do some push-ups and sweat it out." And then it's like,
Of course, the guy from
Yeah, so
Cali.
now
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
undermining
What you're going through.
exactly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I was like, okay. And
So
that
how
was,
open-
honestly, that like flipped the switch, and I'm like, all right, well, yeah, like it is real. Like, yeah, it sucks. It's not as cool as everyone would imagine it, or but it is what it is.
Yeah, but to you, it's huge.
100%.
That's the thing. Is like
Yeah.
you can't compare one person to the others. You know what I mean? Whereas you're like at the center, probably going, "Oh, this guy's got this, and I'm here for this." But the fact remains, it's all real for each individual person. That's one of the biggest things.
And you recognized it was hurting you.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? And you're like, okay, it could be silly to others, but if it's hurting me, it's hurting me.
Yep.
And you're cool, like, oh. And that's got to feel good and uplifting in a way like, at least I know it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? At least I have a goal that is attainable, that I know it could make me feel better.
So that was back in 2019. That was your first
Yep.
trip there. When was the second trip?
Believe that was 23.
Okay.
So I had a couple years there where I was doing good. You get that Superman feeling.
Okay.
And then
Tell us about that. What's that like after the first trip?
I was probably sober for a year or two, on and off, but then working long hours. I mean, I was putting in 130-hour weeks, soft. Not dealing with the stress, not talking with a psychiatrist or a therapist, or just letting that ball roll downhill.
You got the overtime addict thing going on.
Oh, yeah.
The runaways.
Make the money, and then
Yep.
you're like,
Yeah.
okay, this is good. And then you get that high. That in itself can be an addiction too. And then, just again, Superman feeling, nothing can hurt me. And then stress hits you, and all right, I'll smoke a little bit. And then a little bit turned into a lot, and then right back into the cycle.
So now we get back to the third time, back to the center. For the people who may not have heard of it or have not experienced it, what was your experience there at the Center of Excellence?
What is it and what isn't it?
So the first day, just getting there, just actually picking up the phone and calling, there's a lot of doubt. I had got accepted, insurance had cleared, and hey, you can come. So there's part of me where it's like, I don't really need help. And then finally, once I got past that hump and got there, it's a little scary. But then as soon as you talk to the first person you see, welcoming arms, hey, I'm so-and-so from so-and-so, I've been working. I mean, it's just the camaraderie. And that's the biggest part of that is the people who make it, the people like me and you that are alongside you going through the process. Very welcoming, open arms. And then you start communicating with people and then realize like, oh, wow, like I do the same thing. Like you might drink, but I smoke. So it was absolutely, again, nerve-wracking, but then once you're there, it's like, it's very enlightening. Therapy, family therapy, group sessions where, like I said, people are sharing they literally pouring their heart out. And it's, I hate to say a safe space, but it's just, we don't have to put that mask on. We can just take our jackets off and just tell the story how it is.
It's like the kitchen table.
100%.
Where you can just sit down and let it rip.
Yep.
You don't feel like you're telling a story. You're just kind of sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, it's clicking. People, you see someone like, oh, that makes sense. And then piggyback off that.
Yeah. So I've not experienced any inpatient treatment, right? So, but what I have heard is a rhythm and with people that have, and it sounds like step one is releasing yourself from the self-imposed, oh, this is a problem, to going, hey, I'm in a building full of people with problems and we all feel the same way and it's okay.
Yep.
So like here, I'm, quote, normal or to the average Joe, if you will.
Yeah.
Or Josephine, right? So you're like, okay, now I can listen. And now I can sit in a group of humans and understand and be vulnerable with them that we're all going through something. And that all people go through something at one time. And this is what we're going through. Okay. And you start to see this pattern of self-realization as to what's really going on in my life in these situations. Does that sound familiar in your experience?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, being at the center, and we talked, you've been there 3 times. Had you experienced other members there who had been there multiple times?
Oh, yeah. Yep, absolutely. I was not the only, because I always used to say, 3rd time's a charm. And
yeah.
Right.
And I think a lot of people think, when you're doing recovery, you're doing rehab, it's a one and done process.
Yeah,
but
usually not.
Oh, it's like a surgery.
Yes,
you think of it like an actual treatment. I went in and got my arm fixed.
Yeah, you're healed.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. Just do a little rehab after. You heal the muscle,
Yeah.
you do a little work, and you're 100%. It's not that.
Yeah. I wish it was, but it's
That'd be cool,
sometimes
wouldn't
it's
it?
not. It works sometimes for some people.
Right.
But other people, it might take you 3, 6, 10, 15. I mean,
And that's okay.
yeah, it is fine.
And-
It's not the fact of it takes that multiple times. It's the fact that you are going to continue to do it and follow that treatment process. Now, going through this, before you went to the center, before you went and did all these things, what were some of your misconceptions maybe about the center or seeking help? And when you actually went through it and got through the other side, how did those really compare?
Well, it's always, we go back to stigma, like, well, what are the guys going to say and what are they going to think? And that's kind of what got me started with the whole smoking weed thing. Like, I'm trying to be somebody that these other people want me to be, and I can't even be myself. And that's reflecting back, like, the self-care, the self-talk, and the self-love. I got to a point eventually where it was like, if I go back to the firehouse and I'm going to get ridiculed for getting help, who the hell is that person?
Mm-hmm.
Why should I feel shame or guilt or try to keep that mask on? Like, this is me. And that was part of the enlightening part. It's like, once you can just be that vulnerable and let yourself out on the table, like, you can go ahead and make fun of me and say some jokes. Like, you can't hurt me. Like, there's nothing that can hurt me, because frankly, I don't care. You don't pay my bills. You don't satisfy me. Like, I am who I am, and I'm comfortable. When you can get comfortable in your own skin, like, and I feel like that's a big part of the problem, is everyone's trying to be the tough, mighty, like, we can't carry that on our shoulders for as long as we think we can. Eventually, it's just going to break us down, and that's what had happened to me.
And I've noticed a lot of guys that came back from the center have that confidence, right? I remember one of my buddies who went, he came back, and he came back with a T-shirt that said "Firefighter Sad Camp," and it had and like he wore it into the station, right?
Hell yeah!
And at first you don't know how to take it. You know what I mean?
But that's how we deal with it. Like, let's
Yes.
go. Let's go.
Yes,
bring it on.
But
I'm
yes.
strong enough to handle it, and it better be funny, boys.
And he looked at me. He goes, "It's okay to laugh at it. It's
Yeah.
funny, right?" And the confidence that comes with it is awesome. When people come back, and there's almost that honeymoon phase when you get back from the center or you get back from rehab, and you kind of notice guys are walking tall, they're feeling good, and then I don't know, a month or 2 later, all of a sudden, they're starting to hit those problems again.
yeah, the intervention they went through is now wearing off.
Oh yeah,
Almost like the medicine of being there is kind of wearing off.
Yeah,
on
your
them.
cure is no longer, the drugs are wearing off.
Yeah, and it seems, and I want you to talk about it from your perspective, but it seems like you're there, you're in it, you're in this like safe cocoon where people are supportive, and then you get back to the real world, and then all those problems that were there before start creeping back in, right? How do you kind of deal with that transition period where, okay, I'm good, I'm coming back from the center, and then now all of a sudden life is back to life?
Yeah, so the first 2 times I went, I came back, everything was nice and tidy when I came back. We don't want to talk too much about this. No stress. So everything was perfect, essentially.
Sterile. It was sterilized.
Yeah, everything's clean.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
But that bubble, it's kind of tough to describe because obviously you're in a different environment, which is awesome for your health. You create better schedules, activities. But this third time, literally, as soon as I came back, there wasn't like the other times there was a honeymoon phase where it's like, okay, everything's glorious in this. And then eventually, the stressors hit. And then I was right back to where I was. Just failed miserably. Probably worse than I did the time before. This third time, as soon as I got home, life was just, it was just like a boxing match. It was like Mike Tyson just sitting there waiting for you. The girlfriend had lost her job. Just everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, and it was just I couldn't catch a break, and I had to go right into work. I couldn't take 2 weeks off. I landed Friday and I was back to work Monday. Like there was no honeymoon. It's welcome back to life.
Which could have been very stressful and put you right back in that position. So what was the thing that kept you out of it?
Everything that I had. So the third time I went, it was for me. I was getting my body healthier. I couldn't eat meals. My stomach was in knots the whole time I was there. So I used the failures that I had gone through leading up to that experience as motivation. Like, okay, you were in this tough spot. This failed you. And that's what they wanted. They wanted you to fail. They wanted you to not get help and all this stuff. So I just flipped it on the script. I said, all right, I woke up, felt like shit. I went and worked out. Just said, all right, let's just make this my day. And that's how I was when I got home. Just take it right on the chin and just roll with it.
Say right now somebody's listening who hasn't gone to the center yet, but's thinking about going to the center, right? Not only talk to that person, but what can their family do once that person comes back from the center to give yourself that best chance when you get out of that honeymoon phase?
Always checking on people. It's good. Definitely check on them. But we all know when something's wrong. That's huge. But like always well, what are you doing today? What are you constantly getting on somebody? I found that just adds more stress.
Maybe treat it like a conversation rather than
for sure. Hey, you look a little bit more stressed today. Like something you want to talk about. Can we go for a walk? Just different ways as opposed to, oh, what's on the schedule today? What are you doing? Are you going to? You got therapy lined up? You got this? You got that? It's like you said, more of a conversation.
Like organic. You just want to have an organic, and you can say things organically, like, dog, you don't look amazing. Do you need a hug?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You look like you've been throwing up for 3 straight days. You
right. Can I get you some water?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's be honest. We're gonna look at each other and be like, you look like shit, man. What's going on?
For sure.
You know what I
mean?
Your
friend will.
That's what I'm saying.
And hopefully you're not so withdrawn to where your friends can see you.
Yes.
And you were such at work where they probably couldn't not see you because you're going on a lot of calls. You guys aren't just hiding up there.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing is accountability. Yeah. Just know who your core group is. If you're afraid to go, just go. I was afraid both the first 2 times I went, but it was the best decision I ever made. And the support and having family members, therapists, have everything lined up. Like stick to a schedule. I'm not a big schedule guy. The girlfriend usually takes care of that, but that's one thing I got better at this last go around was cleaning and scheduling, and I hate both of them, but I do it way more often, and she loves me for it, I swear.
No, you're not wrong. I'm married. So I will say that you probably, I'm going to go on a limb here and guess that your lifestyle is much less stressful if it's very well regimented. You know when you're going to the gym.
Yep.
You know when dinner is. You know when the dog thing happens. Because I'm the same way.
Yep.
And I get a little squirrely if you mess with my routine, which is weird that we got in our business because we don't get to schedule our emergencies, right? So it's funny, like we can't control when they happen. Yep. But we're kind of control freaks over how we feel when you disrupt our day.
But I think that's because at work we have no control. Right. So when you're at home, that's when you have the control.
Sure.
And that's why we are so regimented because most days we don't have a schedule.
But and more importantly, it keeps him on the good path to stay on the schedule. And I'm the same way. And I think a lot of people that want to lose weight feel the same way. If I just stay on my diet and I stay good and I don't veer at all, I'm amazing. That's not possible is where I'm going to. You can't stay on this perfect straight and narrow. But what I'm also seeing in you is you're recognizing the things you can control and the things you can't. You can't control parts of your schedule and how healthy you are outside of the job. You can't control the number of calls you go on, but you can control the workouts, the diet, the sleep, the relationship with your girlfriend and your dog, your family, all the humans in your life and the extended family. So does that kind of summarize the third trip, and your epiphany is recognizing that, the whole, what's the serenity prayer? Grant me the strength to control the things I can and know the difference between the things I can't.
Yep. Yeah. And that's finally being me, like the person, like, okay, you're comfortable in your own skin. You don't have to, well, I'm into hardcore drugs. No, it's just weed. Relax. Just being honest with yourself. And I've noticed it with my family. They like being around me more. My nieces and nephews. Everything has just been so much better. And it's hard to describe that because I had done it 2 times before and everyone's like, yeah, good job. Everybody's proud of Uncle Matt. But then like actually doing it and then seeing it too, it's amazing.
You don't need anybody to say it. You feel it.
Well, you own it.
I do it, yeah.
Everybody's afraid to show the scars, but you own the scars. You know what I mean?
And they respect you more for it.
Yes, and I think that's what helps you move forward is the fact is you're not ashamed of them. You're not hiding them. You're not doing any of this. You're like, yeah, listen, here they are.
Yep.
This is me. I had to get these to get to where I'm at right now type deal. And it's owning your stuff,
So it's safe to say your perspective has changed from early on of what mental health is and is not, right?
Oh, for sure.
So you went from feeling really isolated, alone, no chance of help. Literally, that's where you went from, to knowing there's help, getting help. So what needs to change in the fire service and in all the other frontline communities in order to make people know and appreciate the fact that if they do need help, they can get it? The feeling of weakness is just that, a feeling.
Yeah, and kind of getting rid, I feel like we're making progress towards getting rid of the stigma of asking for help, which is great. I mean, compared to 20, 30, 40 years ago, we were offered things that our parents and parents' weren't offered. But moving forward, we're still not doing a great job. We can do a much better job. And that was my thing when I got back, like, all right, we need to push to get the guys more resources. And that's, for me, the more resources, like, why wouldn't you want your guys on the front lines with a handful of resources as opposed to here's 1 or 2 options? So in my case, when the one option failed me miserable, the only other option I had was 2. So it was like I would have had to find another way outside of that. But when you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options, I mean, okay, this didn't work for me. Okay, this works for me, or maybe a little bit of both. It's the more like, why wouldn't you? It's like having more money. Why wouldn't you want more money?
And we don't all need the same level of care. Some people need to go into inpatient treatment. Some people need once a week therapy.
Yes.
Some people need EMDR. Some people need a better diet because it's screwing up their brain. It's so individualized, but what you're speaking to is if we had true health care, we could mitigate a lot of these problems and help people thrive while they're working. Right? Not just into retirement and having a long, healthy life, but while you're there, you could be very, very vital to that organization and much more valuable to yourself, your family, and the community you serve.
Yeah, and you can also help other people in the process.
Right.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, but help them in the form of avoiding the problem in the first place.
Yeah, like, hey, I was in the same boat. Like, you can learn from me that it's okay to ask for help. I mean,
right, before we get to the part where your body is rejecting anything, let's help you get solve that issue first. And you shouldn't have to get to the point where your body's telling you you're breaking down, spend 10 years ignoring it, and then need 3 trips to rehab to fix it.
Yeah.
We should be able to listen to people the first times, and it's not always that easy.
And I think we could do, like you talked about, I think we can do better as peers.
Totally.
Having those conversations.
Just colleagues.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Where you guys both touched on it. It's like, don't be afraid to go, hey, listen, I went through this. You know what I mean? And you see a guy struggling or you see somebody struggling and you're like, hey, man, listen, I dealt with this a couple years ago. This is how I made it through. There's options. So I think that us as peers, that's how it changes. You know what I mean? Like you coming on here to talk, that's huge. That wouldn't have happened 10 years ago. Nope. You know what I mean? Yep. Forget about 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. That would have happened 10 years ago. Right?
We're 50-some episodes into this podcast, and we're just now having people really come out and tell their stories in a way that are really, really like, no, I'm still on the job. I'm not just retired, So I want to share some messages with other first responders that are really hesitant to reach out and really give advice to anybody who's struggling and afraid to seek help. What do you have to say to them?
Ultimately, I would say it's okay to not be okay. everybody deals with things differently. It's all about perspective. You might have one call that just comes back and gets you. You might have several. It's actually dealing with it, because us as firemen, we tend to laugh things off, and that's the way to deal with it, which sometimes that does work, but also at times maybe it does not work. It is okay to talk to a therapist and just have a conversation, just to talk to somebody. I mean, can you imagine talking to someone that has nothing to do with your life and just talking, just having a conversation, just letting them know everything that you've dealt with in the past week? I mean, it's awesome. They're not judging you. They're there to help you. And then when you actually talk about it and it leaves and you can hear it, it's a whole different process. So if anybody's afraid to reach out, please never be afraid. I mean, I can't stress that enough. It's amazing and enlightening.
Is it like most things were like, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is it like most things that the thought is worse than the action?
Oh, for sure.
Seeing a therapist, sharing a thought,
naturally,
like all of the things.
Like you said, we try to control everything, so we play everything out in our head, and it's like, well, what if it goes? No, just pick up the phone and call. Don't even try to think about it.
They're going to make me do this, and they're going to make me do that. And I think maybe you can lend a hand to that. Does anybody make you do anything?
No. And then when they make you do something, it doesn't really work.
But you never felt pressure from any type of clinician, have you?
No.
I don't mean for that to be a leading question, but I think you know what I mean there.
Absolutely. It's not like they would push you one way or the other.
They help you find your way, your own personal way.
For sure.
Yes, that's the biggest thing is they don't push you in any direction. They help you see the direction.
Yeah.
That's where the clinicians come into play. Now, if somebody's listening to this podcast, they're where you're at, that crisis mode, that this is my, I got an idea, it's coming, and they're afraid to ask for help. What is it that you want to say to that person right now who's sitting there in crisis, who's contemplating? What would you say to that person right now?
I would say reach out to loved ones or peer support groups. Frontline Strong, definitely a great resource. Anything that your work or anything in your life that you can turn to, really. Just kind of take a step back and think of how loved you are and how much people you have in your life and how great you do have it, because no matter how bad things get, somebody has it worse. And we all understand that. So don't be afraid. Don't hesitate. Just someone that you can lean on them. Like, again, we try to play things out in our head and then we second guess ourselves. Don't get to that point. Just do it. Just pick up the phone, reach out to a family member, reach out to someone that you work with that you can trust. Just reach out. Just pick up the phone and reach out, and I guarantee you will be happy that you made that decision.
Well, you're living proof. You're sitting right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more question on that. What would you say to people that might recognize a situation like this? They see their friend, or maybe not like a friend, somebody they work with that they're cool with, and they're witnessing it. What do you say to those people?
That's not like one of those things where you call out like, hey, man, you look like shit today. You kind of pull them to the side and say, hey, man, you look like you're kind of dragging ass a little bit today. Is there something you want to talk about? We always talk about bedside manner and stuff like that. We always joke. We're the biggest jokers. But honestly, take someone aside and say, hey, you might be going through a lot of stress, but you don't look a little healthy today. You look like you missed a couple meals. You don't, you're not happy. You're not smiling. I think there's something going on. If there's something you want to talk about, then by all means, let's have a conversation.
So maybe privately, directly, and with some love and respect.
100%.
And bring a dog.
The dog
wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
Yes.
You want to pet my dog? Right? Well, I got you petting the dog. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that seems like a lot of it is you don't call out the people publicly. That's just messed up.
Yeah,
but
it's
if you
like
actually, it's not cool. Shame ain't cool. Unless it's funny and the person shaming is shaming themselves and it's objectively funny, then sometimes it's hilarious. Yes. But pulling them aside is probably the best. I know that's how I would want, even if it's somebody I don't know that well, but it has my best interest at hand. At least they're coming to me privately and not making a big thing about it.
Yep.
That's how you can tell the person cares.
Yeah, man.
They take that moment. It's just one-on-one, and it's like, hey, man, what's going on? You know what I mean? And I love the fact that you came on here today.
Yeah,
and very open.
Thanks for having me.
You're really showing that life can get better. at that moment, you may not think so, but life can't get better. And look at, I mean, you're living proof sitting here right now. So we appreciate you taking the time to come on here. Mia, do you want to say anything? You got anything you want to say?
Me.
She's so cute.
Mia. Look at you.
Look at Mia.
Oh, Mama Mia. That's Mama Mia.
Yes. Matt, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for taking the time to come down here.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it was awesome, dude. We're going to have to spend some more time together and talk to more people at Detroit City Fire, PD, all the places. I mean, we're hanging, our studio's literally downtown of downtown. So.
Yep.
Well, thank you for your time, sir.
Have a good day.
Thank you for listening to the Minds on the Frontline podcast. We have more great content coming out soon. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. And make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and have a great day.